All right, guys, we'll get started in a minute here, a little less than a minute. You guys just need to write down the focus question. Please keep in mind this is a double period Monday type of situation. So you'll get 75% of the work done in class, and then you're going to have to do a little bit on your own. So let's go through that. Every Monday is double period Monday, except for like the first couple, because that was nice, but gotta make sure we get through all our topics this year. But it's not gonna be crazy. It's just another 15-minute video with notes you have to watch. It won't take long. All right, so you just need to write down the focus question. What were the highlights of Thomas Jefferson's presidency? He has a big one in terms of the Regents. He has a lot of topics that come up, a lot more than John Adams, even more than George Washington. So let's get a sense of what his major benefits were. Yeah, Milagros, I got a funny joke for you, but I'll wait till later on in the year for me to use it. All the people that say their hand hurts because of taking notes. I got a funny joke for you later on, but we won't share that now. Yeah, you'll see. It will click. I'll make the joke in like January, February. It's been set up for a long time. Because a lot of kids complain about how their hand hurts from notes. And usually you think you're taking a lot of notes now. Just wait till you get to January, February. We get to Unit 4. Tons of notes. All right? So you won't be complaining about these notes now, I promise. All right. So what were the highlights of Thomas Jefferson's presidency? Let me just check the Google Classroom. I want to make sure everything is at least okay. I haven't graded your essays yet. If for some reason you handed in late, that's fine. You will lose some points if you've handed in if you handed in today, but it won't be too bad. Just make sure you get it in there so you don't lose too many points. All right, so let's set up our first Supreme Court case and kind of how this came out. All right, number one, we're going to look at this first Supreme Court case, which takes place under Thomas Jefferson. We're going to look at the Louisiana Purchase, which is a huge topic for the Regents. I think later on this year, one of your next DBQ essay, which won't be till like December or January, will be on the Louisiana Purchase, at least part of it. So this is a huge topic we got to make sure we're familiar with. And then, of course, the Lewis and Clark expedition and something called the Embargo Act. So we're going to focus on the first two for this class, and then the double period Monday the second period will focus on 3 and 4. All right, so 10 more seconds. What were the highlights of Thomas Jefferson's presidency? And we're gonna go through kind of each one. Now you're gonna be doing some listening to start today. Then we're gonna go into the first Supreme Court case, but I need to kind of set things up a little bit. All right. So let's go with this. All right, this is just a quick review. You don't need to write anything down. This is just to remember, okay? What branch of government is led by the Supreme Court? Okay, if you guys want to write in the chat, okay, please, what branch of government is led by the Supreme Court? Judicial, excellent. So I'm going to focus on the judicial branch's job a little bit, okay? What is the Supreme Court's job? They need to judge the laws, okay, and interpret and rule if the situation is constitutional or not. All right. Now, the third one I want you guys to write in the chat, yes or no. Is the Supreme Court ruling something every court under them has to listen to? So if the Supreme Court rules something, do the lower courts, do the state courts, do the local courts have to listen to them? Yes. Okay, that's like federalism. It works the same way. So if the highest court decides something, yes. Even if all the other courts disagree with the Supreme Court, they can overturn them, and we have to listen to the Supreme Court. So it's like the supremacy clause in our Constitution. In this class, you're going to become familiar with maybe 20 to 25 Supreme Court cases. Some Supreme Court cases are very good and very helpful to our country. Some have actually brought our country back and have been very bad. But ultimately, each Supreme Court case is going to set an example, and essentially it's not a law, but it's going to set an example that the country needs to follow. The first major one that we need to learn about comes from Thomas Jefferson's presidency, and it comes from a topic called Marbury versus Madison. So how do you know that it's a Supreme Court case? No, don't write anything down, Milagros. Okay, don't write anything down. Okay? How do you know it's a Supreme Court case? It will always say something versus something. So it will be Panio versus Torero. That could be a Supreme Court case you learned in this class. A Supreme Court case could be about how Milagros is unhappy because they're taking too many notes, so they're suing me into court. Okay? Or a yes, one of them is Dred Scott. Okay, so if you ever see someone versus someone, that's the key to let you know it's a Supreme Court case. Well, I got to throw shade. I don't know. That's how I am. All right. So we're looking at someone versus someone. So if you someone v someone, it's going to be a Supreme Court case. We need to know about it. That's to identify if there's a Supreme Court case. You never really have to know the facts of the case. You never really have to know the details of it. You just need to know the outcome and what the final decision was. Okay? OJ versus the people is a good example, but that's not a Supreme Court case. But yes, that's how it would look. Will we learn about Loving versus Virginia? In this class, we will not, okay? However, it was a big Supreme Court case if we're looking at interracial marriage, all right, which is an important thing, but it's not something I've ever seen in the Regents. That may be something on your AP US history test, okay? All right, so let's set up Marbury versus Madison a little bit, and let me say a couple things. Now, I don't know why I'm thinking of this now, but I want to mention this. Tomorrow, there is no school. It's election day. I am not giving you an assignment. However, I am going to post a 20 to 25-minute lesson that is optional tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow there is there is school for you guys remotely. Everyone's remote, but you're not having a new social studies assignment, okay? So there's not going to be a social studies assignment that I'm giving you that's new, okay? You will get an assignment most likely from ELA and math. However, I am going to post an optional assignment. Tomorrow is the election. The reason I want to just mention this is, yeah, you're doing something with that, I'm sure, law, or maybe, I think maybe social media, maybe not social justice, okay? So tomorrow you're going to get a PowerPoint and a video that I do. If you watch the video, it's going to go over the 2020 election. It's going to go over again how we elect a president, okay, explain the Electoral College in some greater detail. Then it's going to talk about the two major candidates and what you need to know about them, and then what happens after the election. So please, if you want to know more, or if you're going to be watching the election, which I highly encourage everyone does, so you know what you're looking for, you understand what's going on, and you know a little bit about each candidate, please let me know. I teach it as unbiasedly as I can. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an opportunity, though, to have a day where you do spend some time at the election. If you don't do the assignment, I'm not taking any points off. It's not a big deal. If you do the assignment, I think it's just good for you to understand what the heck you're going to be watching over the next couple of days. All right. So let's go back to this. So Marbury versus Madison, which was in the year 1803. It is the first Supreme Court case, but it's also one of the biggest ones. All right. And I'm going to show you how we're going to take our Supreme Court notes. So you're not writing anything down. You're just listening, so you get a little bit of background on the case. So in the election of 1800, if you forget, it was Thomas Jefferson versus John Adams. Jefferson defeated John Adams, okay? But this is true, and this is something you're going to learn. Let's say, hypothetically, Biden wins tomorrow. He becomes the president. He doesn't become the president the following day. He has what's called a transition period, where he's called what's called the president-elect. It's a span of about 2 to 3 months where they are getting ready to officially become the president, all right? So when Thomas Jefferson became the president, he had until March 4th, about 5 months, to become inaugurated and officially become the third president of the United States. So Adams is still in office for 4 months until Jefferson takes over. When you know you're going to be taken out of office, okay, and you're no longer going to be president, you're what's known as a lame duck period, or a lame duck president. That means for 4 months, you know you're leaving the office. So it's kind of good etiquette to not necessarily like do anything too much, okay, and kind of let the transition happen. Hold on. Ms. Belmonte, contact me office, please. Belmonte, contact me office. Okay, so why am I teaching this? It's good etiquette and good protocol to not really do much. John Adams, though, hated Jefferson. So John Adams does not do that. So those last 4 months, John Adams is going to try and do a little bit too much. Okay, so what does he do? Again, not writing anything down. Not writing anything down. During Adams' lame duck period, those last 4 months he's in office, he appoints several justices and hires many people to the court system. Okay, this is something the president is allowed to do, but it's something kind of frowned upon because everyone knows he's not going to be the president. Okay, so it was the duty of Adams' Secretary of State. His name was John Marshall. He will become eventually the Supreme Court Chief of Justice, which you're going to learn soon. And basically, his job, John Marshall, was to grant the commission to each particular new appointee. No, you don't write this, Louise. Marshall didn't deliver them all before Jefferson took over as president. So there were some people who were not technically hired in time. One of the people not hired in time was William Marbury. So now William Marbury is still waiting to get hired. Thomas Jefferson comes in, and Thomas Jefferson's like, yeah, no, I don't want to hire this guy, right? This is not the guy I want to be working in the judicial system, all right? So William Marbury is going to kind of get screwed. Eventually, he's going to sue the courts. When Jefferson takes over, he wants to appoint people that he wants as judges. He doesn't want Adams guys. He hates Adams. He doesn't want anything to do with William Marbury. But William Marbury said, I was appointed under Adams, okay? I need to be hired, basically. Okay, I should be hired in the government job. You shouldn't be able to take that away. So William Marbury tells James Madison, who was working for Secretary of State under Jefferson, that Madison must deliver the commission and William Marbury must be hired. So we have a problem in our country that the Constitution doesn't talk about. What happens when a branch of government has an issue? Right now, the executive branch of government is having an issue with the judicial branch. Who's supposed to solve that? So we need to figure that out. And what we decide from this Supreme Court case is this. Okay, so this is going to be corny, but anytime you hear this music, okay, once you hear that court music theme, that's going to be a protocol for you to do something in this class. Now, when you're sitting in class, you would take out your folder and you would take out the Supreme Court graphic organizer. But you can't do that because we're teaching remotely and COVID-19 and all that stuff. So what you're going to do is you're going to take out something else. You're going to click on classwork. You're going to click on your Supreme Court graphic organizer, okay? And you're going to click on this document popping up here. So anytime you hear that music, you're not copying down notes in your notebook, you're copying down your notes in the Supreme Court document, okay? So everyone do that right now. Practice going to find the Supreme Court document. Again, you're just clicking on classwork, clicking the Supreme Court graphic organizer, click on the document, and then start filling in what's in the box. You don't need to know anything besides the outcome, okay? And the outcome of the box, you're going to write these two things. Now, this is the most you probably ever write. Usually it's just one of these things, okay? So what you're going to write down is box 2 in red. That's it. You don't need to know the minor thing dealing with the what happens. Madison can deliver the commission but cannot be required to. Jefferson is free to choose his own judge. So ultimately, William Marbury loses the case. But all that we care about is what does the Supreme Court case set an example of? What it sets an example of is something called judicial review. This is a huge term that you're going to learn about a lot over the next couple of weeks and months. It's the first time you're seeing it. Okay? Our Constitution was made to make the legislative branch the most powerful, the executive branch the second most powerful, and the judicial branch the least powerful. But upon further review, they realized that the judicial branch is actually probably not powerful enough, okay? Because yes, they can save things from the lower court. They can fix, if someone makes a court decision from the lower court and gets to the Supreme Court, they can make the final judgment. They can make the final ruling. That's not necessarily the big deal, okay? Judicial review gives the power for the court to review acts of the other branches. So what happens when the executive branch and the legislative branch get into a problem? Who decides that? That would be the judicial branch. Okay, they are put in to kind of make sure and to determine, okay, that each branch of government is following the Constitution, is doing things legally. Whenever you see judicial review as well, I want you to also use the words constitutional or unconstitutional. They get to decide officially if a law or what another branch is doing is constitutional or not constitutional. Okay? So if the president decides to declare war on his own, who decides that what they're doing is unconstitutional, going against checks and balances? That is the Supreme Court. Where we get this power, where the judicial branch gets this power of judicial review, is from Marbury versus Madison. Okay? When, who was it? Was it Anicia? When Anicia brought up the Supreme Court case, Loving versus Virginia, the fact that the Supreme Court now had judicial review to review if the executive branch can withhold interracial couples from marrying, that is something from Marbury versus Madison. It gave our judicial branch more power. All right. I'll give everyone another 20 seconds to copy this down. I think when you see the Regents questions, it may be a little hard at first, but I think over time, the questions get easier and easier to answer whenever you get a Marbury versus Madison case. In the doc, Liz Mel, anytime you hear that tune in the background, all right, you go right in the doc, the Google Doc that I shared. You will open that up once a week, once every 2 weeks, because we're constantly filling in new Supreme Court cases. Some are more important than others. Okay, Aura already mentioned Dred Scott versus Sanford. That's a huge one you'll learn about. All right, you're only copying 2, correct? Anyone need more time? All right, and this is the first thing that happens under Thomas Jefferson, because Thomas Jefferson doesn't want to hire William Marbury. Now this goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court establishes, you know what, the Supreme Court needs a little bit more power. Yep. All right, if you need to continue copying, please just get it from Aura, which is posted in the chat. All right, let's move on to this question here. We get an actual quote from the ruling of Marbury versus Madison. It is emphatically to the province and duty of judicial department to say what the law is. Okay? So Marbury versus Madison, 1803. Anytime you see Marbury versus Madison, you should start to think of a couple of key terms. This statement expresses the Supreme Court's claim that what? Okay, Gentiana said 2. 2 is incorrect. Great try. Federal laws must be approved by the courts before they can take effect. Not necessarily true. Good try. Okay, they don't have to. The Supreme Court can eventually overrule it to make sure it's unconstitutional. Then they get rid of them. Good try again, Tiana. 4 is the correct answer. Marbury versus Madison says the power of judicial review belongs to the courts. Moreover, again, Tiana, if you want to say 2 is a correct answer, it's not from the Supreme Court case, Marbury versus Madison. It's just from the Constitution. All right, so you're not wrong for choosing that answer. It's just not the best answer. The Supreme Court decision, Marbury versus Madison, increased the power of the federal courts by what? Good. This is also 4. So judicial review is a key word, and judicial review is another word to determine if something's constitutional or unconstitutional. Okay? The judges have the right to review if something's constitutional or unconstitutional, not just laws. Any action taken by the federal government. Okay? This is another good example where they don't use judicial review, but they use another one of those key buzzwords. Supreme Court case Marbury versus Madison. It's always written italicized with the V. Strengthen the power of the judicial branch by what? Excellent. This answer is also 4. We should play number 4 on the lottery tonight if we could, if you guys were allowed, because all the answers seem to be 4. Okay. So don't write down the new focus question. We're just continuing the highlights of Thomas Jefferson's presidency. We're now looking at his biggest moment as president, which is the Louisiana Purchase. This is something I believe you guys would be familiar with last year, at least I'm hoping. So let's take a look at the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, so let's go back. Make sure we understand. Before, in 1790 and 1800, this was our country. We had states over here. You need that? We have states over here in this kind of pink color. We have the Northwest Territory from this orange kind of color. All right, but everything east of the Mississippi is a part of the United States. Okay, this is all review from 7th grade. All right. This colony of Louisiana eventually was owned by France. Okay, I know it says Spain here, but that changes in the 1800s a little bit. Okay, so this is called the Louisiana Territory, not owned by the United States. All right, we get a really interesting situation that kind of just falls in the lap of Thomas Jefferson. It's not necessarily something they were fully looking for. Okay, they wanted to work out a deal with France, and really what they wanted, if you follow the map here, if you follow my mouse, is right here. This is an area called New Orleans. Okay, this is the area that at least starts a conversation with France, because France owns this area right here. They own something called the Port of New Orleans. The Spanish, they were located kind of in Mexico at this time. They kind of sold the land to France, but they did own Spain at the time. They did own Florida at the time. Okay, so this is what you need to copy down. On the left, what was the Louisiana Purchase from 1803? All right, I'll give you a minute, so I will shut up so you can copy down and I can be quiet.
Wait, Mr. Panio,
Yes?
how much money would it be back then when he bought it, in today's price?
Let me look that up. I want to give you the exact number. Not a lot, but let me get the exact number. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So let's just go over what happens here. So this is pretty straightforward from 7th grade. Some details that you're probably familiar with, okay? France fell into trouble during their own French Revolution. They were having problems, and Napoleon Bonaparte, who was the leader of France at the time, eventually sold this area of Louisiana territory to the United States. So let's kind of talk about why. Jefferson started the conversation with Napoleon, basically saying that we want this area of New Orleans, which is a port. Ports, for those who don't know, the Port of New Orleans, a port is important because you can have boats and ships come into that particular area, so you can bring in trade or materials or eventually send stuff out to the rest of the world. The Port of New Orleans is extremely important because that port is located close to the Mississippi River. Now, if you're looking at a geography perspective, the Mississippi River can take the traded goods coming from the Port of New Orleans. It could go to big parts of our country and go all through the Midwest and through the southern states. All right. So Jefferson had this idea, as did his administration, that if we could buy the Port of New Orleans, we can get an area where these states in the middle of the country can now trade out with the rest of the world. And think about the logic. If you're in Kentucky, let's say, all you got to do is get your supplies to the Mississippi River, sail down south to the Port of New Orleans, go into the Gulf of Mexico, and the Gulf of Mexico goes to the Atlantic Ocean, and now you could trade in the rest of the world. The only places you could really trade before this were places like New York, Boston, Pennsylvania, stuff located next to the Atlantic Ocean. But now if you're moving westward in the middle of the country, if you can get to the Mississippi River and get to the Port of New Orleans, you could trade out with the rest of the world. So Jefferson, has some communication with Napoleon and kind of asks him, what could we do to arrange us buying the Port of New Orleans? We basically offer him $1 million or $2 million for the Port of New Orleans. And Napoleon Bonaparte comes with the most interesting counter offer of all time. He goes, how about we offer you not just the Port of New Orleans, but we'll offer you the entire Louisiana territory. So Jefferson's like, okay, yeah, how much? You want like $100 million, $200 million sort of thing? No, they're going to ask us for a price of $15 million. Okay? And if you're looking from today's terms, all right, that means they are asking for $345 million in today's money. Now, that sounds like a lot, but it's not. The federal government makes billions of dollars a year. So we got all of this land for an extremely good price. Now, why would France do this? Well, France is struggling, okay? In wars, they needed a ton of money, and they had no use for the Louisiana territory. So they said, you know what, let's just sell it. Let's make as much money as we can off it. And Thomas Jefferson and our administration said, yeah, that seems like a great deal. Why not? Immediately with this purchase, we doubled the size of our country, okay, with that one purchase. So everything's good. No problems. We have the size, double our country. Except there's one little problem. The Constitution. When you read the Constitution, there's nothing in it that talks about buying land. So who technically has the power to buy land if the federal government doesn't have the power? The states. So we got a little bit of a problem. Anisia asked, when was America done paying back debt from the American Revolutionary War? Did this deal help America? Oh, that's a great question, Anisia. So technically speaking, we paid back our debt from the American Revolution midway through Alexander Hamilton's financial plan. So we'll say 1795, roughly. It's a really nice question. Okay, this was not needed to pay back their debt by any means. So that's a really good question. So now again, Tiana, Thomas Jefferson says, yeah, we can't have the states buy this. They can't afford it, number one. And we don't want New York buying the Louisiana territory so they have control of it. So we need to use, like again, Tiana said, The elastic clause. Okay? Doesn't seem like much of a problem. Last thing you're copying down for period 1. So there's one other big problem. Who can tell me what the big problem is that makes Jefferson seem not so good? And it deals with the elastic clause. This is making a connection. This is not easy. But why does this seem like Jefferson's being a kind of not so good guy? Gantiana, yes, you could speak. And Anicia is on the right track.
So he believed like in a strong constitution. So he believed what was like said in the constitution, and now like he's saying that he wants to buy land. So he used the elastic clause, which is like he goes off from what he actually believes.
Right. So remember this whole lesson we did like last week? I just going back just to remind us a little bit. At this whole thing. Hamilton's rival, Democratic Republican Thomas Jefferson, said the elastic clause is not something you should do. He was strongly against the national bank because whatever's in the Constitution, that's what you could do, and that's the only thing. But now all of a sudden, when Jefferson's president, he says, yeah, that elastic clause thing here makes a little bit of sense. And to be honest, he's not wrong. But he's being a hypocrite. I mean, there's no other way around it. Hamilton ends up dying. His rival ends up dying in 1804. But he was alive for the Louisiana Purchase. And Hamilton just rips him. He's saying, you hypocrite, how in the world do you say you could buy land, but I can't make a national bank? All of a sudden, now the elastic clause makes sense now that you're in charge. So Thomas Jefferson was a very solid president. He did a lot of great things. The Louisiana Purchase was a great purchase. No one in their right mind would turn down doubling the size of your country for a good price. Okay? No one. But Thomas Jefferson did not technically, by his standards, have the right to do it. If he's a strict constructionist, this is not something he was allowed to do. Yet he does it. All right? So the Constitution did not clearly state whether the president had the constitutional right to buy land. Remember, the president can only do whatever exactly the Constitution says, so it doesn't become too powerful like a king. However, now he uses the elastic clause to change that. Milagros, if a country was to buy land, I don't even know. Definitely more than the Louisiana Purchase. That was such an incredible land deal. I'd probably say $100 million to $500 million, depending on the size. The Louisiana Territory today is worth tens of billions of dollars. Yeah. Maheen, he dropped his own morals to get land. Yeah, in some ways. In some ways. I think if you're someone who believes in something and then when you're challenged with that and you kind of go against your belief and be a little bit of a hypocrite, it's not always the best look. But I don't think there's any denying the fact that this was a good land deal, right? Because our country doubled our size. Our country instantly became stronger. And this was a purchase that ended up paying dividends in the long run. All right? All right, so I'm going to leave you with two choices for the next 10 minutes. Okay, do I want to do this now? Do I want to do this now? Do I want to do this now? Yeah, why not? We'll do this now, and then I'll leave you with two choices. All right? So a geographic and economic motivation for Louisiana Purchase. So a land motivation and an economic motivation, okay? Why are you trying to make more money? Was the desire to what? Why did we want to get the Louisiana Purchase? Excellent. 3. We thought if we could just get the Port of New Orleans, then we could, have a lot more trade, have a lot more things coming in and out of our country. So the correct answer is 3. Which geographic advantage did the United States gain by purchasing Louisiana Territory from France? What now fully becomes in our control? You need to know a little geography to get this answer. Also 3. Excellent. Now we get full control of the Mississippi River. It's fully ours, and we get to use it any way we want, which is really, really good. Okay? 2 more. Here's another question. Look at this. Which geographic area was added to the United States by the Louisiana Purchase? So this is a day 1 question now. Which area was added here? Sorry, let me go back. Sorry. Okay. So which area was added fully by the Louisiana Purchase? Nope, not the Appalachian Mountains. Good try. 3 is the correct answer. Okay, so go back. The Appalachian Mountains were located right here. We got that officially from the Treaty of Paris when the Revolutionary War ended. The Louisiana Purchase gave us officially the region of the Great Plains. The middle of our country with the flat land and a lot of farmland is going to be from the Louisiana Purchase. Okay? That's a good mistake. That's okay. So just knowing kind of where things are on the map is a little bit helpful, as always. No, Rena, go with your gut. Even if you get the question wrong, I'd rather you get the question wrong than, copy the classmates. In deciding to purchase Louisiana territory, President Thomas Jefferson had to overcome the problem of what? Good. Rosemary is ready for that one. 4. Okay, excellent. Contradicting his belief in a strict interpretation of the Constitution. If I could find some funny comments by Hamilton, I'll try and do it quickly, and I'll post them on the chat on the Louisiana Purchase. He just rips them up and down. He's like, you're such a hypocrite, typical Thomas Jefferson, just doing what's best for you, just because they hated each other, but in a productive, good way for our country, not like hated each other where they were trying to hurt our country. But Hamilton was just like, this is unbelievable. I spent the whole part of my time under George Washington's presidency in the cabinet listening to Thomas Jefferson complain about how I'm trying to gain too much power, and look what he's doing now. All right, so that's some pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so I'm going to leave the last 8 minutes. Sure, no problem, Manuel. I'm going to leave the last 8 minutes up to you. Okay, I'm going to leave the last 8 minutes up to you. You have an assignment that has a reading with the Louisiana Purchase and eventually Lewis and Clark. You could start that. That's a Google Doc. Okay. Or you could start your period 2 lesson now. It's like a 17-minute video or something. You're going to copy your notes down, and then you're going to put the secret coded word at the top. This is for period 2. This is what you're doing on your own. You don't have to write a Milagros. If you didn't, it's okay. If you understand what it's saying, that's fine. All right, but it would be helpful to write it. All right. So again, if you want to click on the YouTube that I posted, the link there, I could post it in the chat too if you want to, if you're really lazy. You're going to learn now about Lewis and Clark's expedition, okay? After we get to the Louisiana Territory, we need to figure out what the hell's there. All right, that's where Lewis and Clark come in, okay, for those that don't remember last year. That's going to go into Lewis and Clark, and it's going to go into the final thing, which was Thomas Jefferson's presidency, which was the Embargo Act, which is an important term. Embargo is an important term we'll learn about coming up in this class a lot. So please take a look back at that. All right, so you could start the assignment on the Google Classroom if you want to get a start with that. That's a reading on Louisiana Purchase with like 8 questions or so, okay? Or you could start the period 2 lesson. Both the Louisiana Purchase document and the finished notes have to be handed in by the end of the period, by the end of the day today to get credit for today's assignment. All right, tomorrow is election day, so again, I will not be posting a new assignment. It's just an optional assignment if you or even your parents don't understand how presidential elections really work, or if you want some clarification, or if you're like, how in the world could someone vote for Trump? Or how in the world could someone vote for Biden? I try and go through the pros and cons of each candidate as unbiasedly as I can. So you could do that too. Milagros, you take a screenshot of your notes, and you're going to post it in with your assignment at the end with the secret coded word. All right? So make sure you do that as well. Yeah, I got to make sure you watch the video, Lagros. Otherwise, people are just going to skip, screenshot. They'll be done in 5 minutes, but they're going to miss the assignment. The video and what I say sometimes is more important than the actual notes. Yes, Abigail, go ahead.
So did the Louisiana Purchase have anything to do with like presidents being greedy at all? Or is it just like they thought it was more helpful?
I think it was more helpful. I don't think Jefferson was being greedy. I think he understood that it would make him look very good, of course. But I think our country was wanting to grow. And you saw that he wanted the port of New Orleans. I don't think he did it for any greediness. I think he just got a good situation that was put onto his lap and he took advantage of it. Milagros, I did say it in the middle of the vid, but it might be at the end, it might be at the beginning. Who knows? The universe is running out of presidents. Well, we got plenty of presidential candidates. It defeats the point because you say it at the end. I didn't say it at the end. I put it in a random spot this time. You have to watch the whole thing, otherwise you won't find it. I just say it for like 2 seconds. AOC 2024. I don't think she'll be old enough. You have to be 35. I think she'll be 34. She might not be old enough. Do I think AOC would be a good president? Manuela, are you asking my opinion as a teacher or as like an American citizen? I think as a teacher, I'd be worried about some of her policies because they are very expensive, to say the least. A lot of her ideas are a little bit worrisome in the case that like she's trying to have like these big changes, but if you learn some of the things in our class, like socialism, communism, like they're kind of more alongside that than America's like typical ways. So I'm not sure. AOC is the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a representative, a big person in the House of Representatives. She's kind of a new person that people like or don't like, depending on their politics, I guess. So I don't know if she would be a good president. I think she's a little too young at this point. I don't think a 35-year-old should even be a president, to be honest. I think you need to have a little more wisdom, a little bit more experience in life to become president. So we'll see, though. Maybe give it a couple more years. Yeah, she's a big Gen Z, because she, knows the technology and she's personable. So yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if she being young and youthful is the best thing for a president's job, but some people might think that. Being president is stressful. Yeah, definitely. Milagros, so I don't do anything wrong. So do we do today's assignment with the class right now? Yes, you're going to post the Google Doc that you do, Milagros, and then the notes from the period 2 lesson. You don't have to post today's notes from period 1, just the ones that you're doing on your own. Maheen, you could run at 34 and get elected at 35. That will make more sense, right? Because usually only campaigning for about a year. But as long as you're 35 when you go into office, that's fine.
Good afternoon. Please excuse this interruption. If you need further clarification about tomorrow's schedule, the
yes.
administrative team
you hear the announcement?
at 2:15 today.
Yeah, JFK was the youngest president. 41, maybe, I think he was. Do you have to be born in America? Oh, no. If you're born in America, then obviously you can be president. If you're not born in America, you have to be living here, I think, 15 years. You could take a photo or, you could do a Google Doc. Either's fine. All right. It is 11:07, guys. I'll obviously hang in here if you have any further questions on what to do. But you guys, I believe, will be off tomorrow, as far as I know, okay, from social studies. So definitely, regardless, you're going to have the election assignment. You could do that if you'd like. All right. I'll see you guys later. Sure, go ahead and unmute yourself.
So my Wi-Fi was like being stupid like throughout all of this. So what do we do about the Supreme